on page 245, how should you listen? And he talks about, and he quotes Carl Rogers, one of the 20th century's great psychotherapists, knew something about listening. He wrote, "The great majority of us cannot listen. We find ourselves compelled to evaluate because listening is too dangerous. The first requirement is courage, and we do not always have it." So part of listening, it's just like what you were saying with these, a lot of our problems, religion, economy, anything, no one wants to listen to the other side, because that takes courage, because you realize that, listening to someone else could honestly change you, right? It's kind of a self-discovery, and I think, and I hate that word, I don't know why, whenever I said it, I was like, but, I think that's one of the things that, I've kind of pointed it out. I think it's very important is knowing yourself, right? And I feel like that's one of the things I've mentioned, like staring in a mirror in yourself, and I feel like the next thing really is just having conversations with people. Rule 9. Assume that the person you are listening to might know something you don't.
Love it.
Did you write any notes about what the actual chapter, what do you... Because
No.
I wrote my first bullet point was shut up.
Shut up, that's it.
Yeah, that good old active listening skills,
Yeah, that's an important one. That's the whole chapter, right? Essentially.
Right, yeah. And that's a skill that it takes a while. You have to build that. He gets into it a good part. Then the other one I have was don't disclose everything you know, and I don't know. I don't think that's necessarily true. It kind of depends on it. He gets into that. It gets into different kinds of conversations in this chapter, right?
Well, I can tell you that I recently experienced a situation in which I definitely shouldn't have divulged everything I knew. There was this thing that was going up for sale, and I knew it was going up for sale, and I just so happened to be there in front of this thing, and this random person rolls up, and they're like, "Man, that's a nice thing. I would love to buy a thing like that." And my dumb butt just immediately said, "Yeah, the elderly person is considering selling it here in the next few weeks, and yeah, I'm thinking about buying it." Well, guess what happens? Old dude starts rolling in every day, just scoping the thing out. And I see old dude rolling in to scope the thing out every day. So that means either it's incredibly ironic that I just so happened to look at old dude every time he rolled by, or he was rolling by a lot and I just so happened to see him some of the times he rolled by. Either way, wasn't the biggest fan of myself in that particular moment, because I knew I had just done myself a disservice, because now I had a competitor to bid against, Right. So, should I have lied to the dude? No. But should I have smiled and say, "Yep, I would like to own something like that too"? Yeah, and that should have been it. So, not trying to contradict you, but I did just experience something in which I went, man, I'm trying to be honest with people. Not trying, I really do genuinely have a problem with lying. In fact, that is not a isolated situation. There's been several times in which in the interest of not lying, I tell the full truth, and in turn give a competitor a little more information than what they should have, if that makes sense.
Right. That I can't think of the actual quote, and I think Jordan Peterson said it in the chapter before this, but it's like don't what is it? Don't give gold to the pig or something like that. But like you whatever. I cannot remember what the quote is.
I wish you could, because that sounds like a good one, whatever it is.
Yeah, but it's basically just like, if he said it. I'm not flipping through it, but he said it in the chapter where he was talking about the kid that he was like babysitting and trying to get him to go to sleep, and I can't remember what it was, but you don't always give your and I don't even want to call it advice, but because we'll get into this. So start
and
now.
we should get into it, because
Yeah.
holy crap, that is a bad one. That is a bad one on my behalf. Let's preview it now, and that is like, if you find yourself constantly giving advice, you might just be an. That's
Right.
just the preview. We can get into that in a minute, but like that was a harsh realization for me. Is like, man, I just I'm vested, right? Like I want the people around me to do well, and sometimes that means I give advice, and it's that's what I appreciate about this book. Again, like the concepts that Dr. Peterson is discussing in this book aren't complex ideas, right? Like it's stuff that we probably know to an extent, but every once in a while he says something with a slightly different perspective that is just so profound. If you're really reading and paying attention, you can't help but pause and reflect. And that is that moment for me. It's like, oh, that, yeah. I guess I am a little pernicious sometimes.
Yeah. So I'm gonna start. I'm gonna read. I have a part of I have basically the whole first paragraph kind of underlined, but I'm gonna read it, and then we'll. Not advice. Psychotherapy is not advice. Advice is what you get when the person you're talking to, that you're talking with about something horrible and complicated wish you would just shut up and go away. Advice is what you get when the person you are talking to wants to revel in the superiority of his or her own intelligence. If you weren't so stupid, after all, you wouldn't have your stupid problems. And I'm just going to read the next couple sentences of the next paragraph. Psychotherapy is genuine conversation. Genuine conversation is exploration, articulation, and strategizing. When you're involved in a genuine conversation, you're listening and talking, but mostly listening. Listening is paying attention. It's amazing what people will tell you when you listen. Sometimes if you listen to people, they will even tell you what's wrong with them, etc., etc. I'm going to kind of stop there. But I think that's it, and I have this problem, and he gets into it later on in the chapter. When you're listening to someone, I have this problem to where like I kind of daze out. I start thinking about what I want to say next because my brain is so slow. Like that's generally mine. But when you do that, you're not participating anymore, right?
Hard to not do, especially like, I don't know, I'm making an excuse, but the first thought that came to mind is, well, I want to contribute to the conversation. That's not okay. I'm not saying it's okay. It is a problem, because like, if you genuinely care, you want to have a genuine conversation with that person, and in those moments, what you're going to discover in this chapter is you're basically competing. And maybe we cover it later in this chapter, maybe we talk about it now. In fact, I want to talk about it now, because that is again one of those things in which, like, it's just this profound moment of realization in which, like, oh man, I do that sucks, like, oh, that's got to be fixed.
Yeah, and I was thinking about two specific situations. one is just doing this broadcast and learning how to do it, and so and yeah, it's a problem, and but the conversations kind of starts going in one direction, and I start worrying about how am I going to contribute, and then I'm like, wait, it seems like he's kind of finishing his thoughts on this, so I stop listening and I start looking for like what's the next thing, because it has to flow, it has to keep going, and um but the other thing is and more people will be able to relate to this one. I started thinking about a conversation and I was having with a coworker, where she was kind of talking about some of her personal problems and this, that, and the other, and so it's a woman talking to a man, and Peterson kind of touches on this subject too, is that sometimes women don't want answer, they don't want it to be fixed in such a way that they want to explore they want to explore the problem to its fullness, to its completeness.
They don't want to fix the problem until the problem is defined, and rightfully so. You can't fix a problem until you fully define what that problem is. And that, and in reading that in this chapter, I immediately thought about work, because I turn on power plants, right? Like, that is a major part of what I do, is actually taking the components of the power plant and making them all work together. And sometimes, like, stuff just goes sideways, and there's like hundreds of thousands of components, millions of components. I can genuinely say that there are millions of components on these facilities, and sometimes you have no clue where the problem is. You'll get, like, say, an error code on this piece of equipment, and like, for instance, a ground fault for you electrical folk. Well, that ground fault could literally be anywhere within a couple of square miles. Yeah, I think that's a genuinely good estimate. Yeah. And so, like, sometimes I'll just be like, all right, do this, 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 and this, and then we'll see what happens, And it's a long-winded way to say, like, oh, well, maybe I should be a little bit more pragmatic in the setup of this troubleshooting. I have a tendency to just, like, because you're up against a deadline, right? So I have a tendency to just go 100 miles an hour in every direction trying to fix the problem. And it works, but it doesn't feel good. And I'll waste money sometimes, and I burn people out sometimes, So fair enough, ladies. Maybe we should define the problem.
Well, I mean, I just had the same thing happen to me this week. With on the farm, I have like a little tractor that was made in like the 50s, Alice Chalmers Model G, and it's like a toy that works. And anyway, I had took some implements off of it and was trying to put some new ones on to try to run some rows and stuff like that, just kind of toying around. And then it was like, why does my front implement, because it's on a different set than the back, why is my front implement not going all the way down like it should? And instead of just like looking at the implement, like when you do your hydraulics, because it's been converted to hydraulics, when you're working it, and instead of just sitting there and just trying to figure out, oh yeah, so because there's like 3 or 4 different connections that adjust that, because the hydraulics, it's not like the hydraulics on a new tractor, where you can kind of set where you want the hydraulics to kind of stop at, where your implement stops at. It's just the hydraulics are just kind of an up and down. So instead of just like using my critical thinking skills, which I have none, but instead of like putting it up and down a couple of times and and figuring out and looking at it and thinking, yeah, if I move this arm to this position, and instead of doing all that, I ended up completely junking it up and having to go back to square one. And then my brain was like, oh, this would set this, and that would set, this, how the bull tongue would stick out or not, but this would control the depth. So about 2 hours out of my day and cursing a lot.
I had a vendor, tell me that it was my fault. The equipment wouldn't work for like a month straight, and we had like 10 of their people look at this one piece of equipment, and like everybody comes back and says like, nah dude, it's on your side, it's not our side. And fair enough, gotta be reasonable, right? Like I'm not perfect, I could have missed something, but I already knew they were gonna say that. So I checked everything, and everything was good. And finally, the 11th person that showed up at the site was like, oh yeah, these 2 wires were backwards. I can't believe the other 10 people didn't catch this. And now the equipment works fine. So, 2 hours is one thing. A month, like the amount of revenue lost from that equipment being down for a month is probably 3 or 4 times at least more than what I make in a year,
Right.
So like, that's a problem. The point is, like, define the problem. How did 10 people miss these 2 wires being backwards? Why didn't I just actually watch the equipment function up and down to see what the hydraulics were doing before I just dove into it, checking things? Like, define the problem. To bring it back to, like, general life situations, like, if you're having an argument with somebody, do you understand what you're arguing about? Can you, and this is a big one covered in this chapter, are you able to tell the opponent, if you will, their stance better than they can tell you what it is? Because if you can do that, not only do you understand what the problem is, at least to an extent, but quite frankly, it also helps with, having a more compelling argument in return if you genuinely think that you're right. And if you're genuinely right, you're able to communicate more efficiently, what that problem is or what that resolution is. And it starts with defining what that problem is, understanding what it is. And a lot of that goes back to the title of this chapter, which is, assume the person that you are listening to might know something that you don't. Shut up. Listen. Understand. It goes like, you could look at these big topic issues from like kneeling for the flag, or me being able to have a 30-round clip of 7.62 sitting in my house because I know that is an effective means to protect my house in all sorts of ranges. The choice to do whatever you want to in your bedroom, your choice of religion. Like, shut up. If you don't understand the other person's perspective, why are you talking? Why? And don't twist the narrative to make their side sound dumb just to make your side sound better. That doesn't work. That's not a part of conversation. That's not a part of getting to true resolution. That's why we have these giant issues that we haven't been able to work through as a society for multiple generations now. Despite the fact that we have means to clearly communicate with people anywhere in this galaxy, bro. Listen, it's not even just like us talking here, tonight. It's not even just picking up the cell phone and calling somebody. Bro, you can put somebody on a rocket and you can launch them to frickin' Pluto and you can talk to them if you wanted to. But if you're trying to fix a problem and you're not listening to what that person out there at Pluto's telling you, you're never going to figure it out. Sorry, I had to rant, but like that's a big one, man. This chapter,
you're going to a good place, and I don't mind jumping around. And he again, I don't mind jumping like straight into that because I feel like that's a important and simple topic. On page 245, how should you listen? And he talks about and he quotes Carl Rogers, one of the 20th century's great psychotherapists, knew something about listening. He wrote, "The great majority of us cannot listen. We find ourselves compelled to evaluate because listening is too dangerous. The first requirement is courage, and we do not always have it." So part of listening, it's just like what you were saying with these, a lot of our problems, religion, economy, anything, no one wants to listen to the other side, because that takes courage, because you realize that, listening to someone else could honestly change you, right? It's kind of a self-discovery, and I think, and I hate that word, I don't know why. Whenever I said it, I was like, but I think that's one of the things that I've kind of pointed it out. I think it's very important is knowing yourself, right? And I feel like that's one of the things I've mentioned, like staring in a mirror in yourself, and then I feel like the next thing really is just having conversations with people. Yeah. So.
And I'll start out by saying I struggle with being such an introvert. I'm sorry to derail you, but like you touched on a major talking point. We need to get back to this, but like I've got these very dear people in my life that are so inverted and so recluse that like I don't think they talk to people. I don't think they talk to each other, for long periods of time. And one thing that Peterson states in this book is like, it's kind of scary. Like, people organize their brains with conversation. We have to talk with other people. We have to talk things out. It's not optional. So I want to live on a sailboat in the middle of the ocean. Sorry, guys, I'm out at some point. Like, we've had great times together learning things, but I want to be crystal clear. My goal, and maybe we can still talk when I'm out there, but my goal is to be in the middle of the ocean, like by myself, with a couple of loved ones, if they want to go with me. But if they don't, that's fine too. But with that said, I have to maintain relationships with other people because I have to maintain a healthy mental state. Obviously, like, I have people in my life that I care about and want to maintain relationships with regardless. But the point I'm trying to make here is, like, the relationship that we're fortunate enough to have here. And, I hope you are able to utilize this tool for benefit like this. Like, we've got to talk some of this stuff through because we're pushing hard, right? Like, we want the most out of our careers. We want the most for our families. We want the most out of life. This is a very finite bit of time that we get here, and so we need to push hard, and that can be taxing on your brain. So number one, you got to take time to I'm going to keep telling you this, to recharge, to reflect, but you've also got to make time to like have these genuine conversations in which you kind of discuss the things that are heavy on your mind, or complex that you genuinely need to work through for the betterment of yourself or your family. Can you get us back on
the... Well, I want to kind of talk about it because I heard someone say something the other day, and it was just funny to me, but the guy was like, it's and it was YouTube short. If I can, if I remember, I'll put a link. But it's a guy, I think he's really funny, but he was talking about, it's my birthday today, and my wife always lets me do whatever I want to. And the one thing that I'm going to do today is I'm just going to go walk around outdoor like Sportsman World stores, and there's like 5 in my city, and every time I go into one, I'm gonna find some old man or just some man to talk to, and I want to learn about trolling motors. I'm gonna talk about trolling motors for 45 minutes, and like that like struck me, and I was like, God, I wish I could do that. But then I was like, why do I want to talk about trolling motors for 45 minutes? And it's one of those things that you just said. It's recharging, right? That is a very like anything like that. You kind of start thinking about kind of these things because that's the things what we do better every day, right? So just a simple, and that's one of the things is start kind of practicing some of these conversation skills, just in your general conversations throughout the day. And if you're sitting down, or I don't want to say sitting down, but if you're just talking to some random stranger about something that you're passionate about, and it seems like he's kind of passionate about it too, and it's something as simple as trolling motors, you think about that conversation, and it's honestly just he's going to give you some facts, and he's going to back that up with some of his experiences, and then you're going to give him facts, and you're going to back that up with your experiences. There is no my point of view is better than yours or anything like that. That's it. And I don't know. I just thought that was something really unique that just happened that kind of fit really well with this.
You just said it again. You just brought it back, man. The primal hierarchy thing. Like, are you saying things to one up the person having the conversation with you? And granted, again, I'm going to make an excuse that I don't, even though I'm making it myself, I don't fully support. Sometimes I, want to keep the person entertained in the conversation, right? Like I want the person to go, wow, that is interesting, or wow, like that person has experienced something that I've experienced, and like what a crazy experience that was. I'm glad this person had something similar that we can, have in common, whatever it may be. But there's still like the part in which you're like, sometimes if you are a type of person that does that, and I am, like, you genuinely are trying to impress that person. And that's really where it gets unhealthy, right? Like, are you being genuine when you're genuinely trying to impress a person? Like, it's a slippery slope, right? Because, like, I see it again in some of my loved ones in which, and granted, what I'm about to say, I haven't done my own research on, but it really doesn't matter. This person that I know walked up to me this week, and like, to me that they appear to be this type of person that is always searching to be a part of a marginalized group in some way, shape, or fashion. Like the primal hierarchy in which, like, screw you and your marginalized group, my group is marginalized as well, so therefore I don't care about yours anymore. So this guy walks up to me. He's like, there's been 156 attacks on the Catholic Church. It's like, all right, where are you getting that information? Our YouTube channel. Bro, we're on YouTube. We're idiots. We're just talking. I'm not here to tell you the news. And more importantly, like, that is, to get back to the point, like, that's the type of behavior that we're talking about, in which, like, this person just needs to have this one up on everybody around them. Like, I am strong because my group is under attack, but I'm here standing proudly in front of you. Look how strong I am. Please recognize when you're doing that, because here's the bottom line. If nothing else, there is a hierarchy there, right? And odds are, in a lot of these conversations that you're having with these people, like especially at work, you're going to be talking with them again. And when you're doing that, I have a better experience than you. type bullcrap. Everybody that's involved in those conversations recognizes that, either on a conscious level or a subconscious level. But either way, essentially, the conclusion that they're developing is, oh, this person's full of crap. And so you carve out a reputation for yourself within that hierarchy of being somebody that is full of crap. Like, oh, here comes Bob again. I wonder what crazy story they got for us now. Strap in. And then there's no validity to anything you say at some point anymore. Do you recognize when you're doing that? If you don't, perhaps you should be a little bit self-reflective on the conversations you've had in recent history. See if you can identify that. See if that's something that you can work on. I know I still have to work on it. Again.
No, I mean, we'll keep going on it because he goes over that, the different kinds of speech in this chapter, and he goes into very good detail of that. It's on 249. Anyone that's following along, I'm not gonna read the whole thing, but during such a conversation, which often tends toward the ideological, the speaker endeavors to denigrate or ridicule the viewpoint of anyone holding a contrary position, and 2, use selective evidence while doing so, and finally, impress the listeners, many of whom are already occupying the same ideological space, with the validity of his assertions. The goal is to gain support for a comprehensive, unitary, oversimplified worldview. Thus, the purpose of the conversation is to make the case that not thinking is the correct track. And then he gets onto it, and he's like talking about, when people are doing that, you make everyone else around you uncomfortable, and it's just like what Otis was just saying. You people will start to get that, oh, here comes Falcon again. I don't want to listen to this guy. I don't. And if people don't want to hear you talk, I mean, if people don't want to be around you, that makes for a worrisome, a troubled life. I have patients like that. I worked night shift last night, and I literally had a patient that just wanted to talk about a lot of negative things. I'm not gonna get into it because it was like to the point to where, like, I would walk in, do what I needed to do. He would talk the entire time. I wouldn't give him anything. I wouldn't comment, and then I would immediately walk out of the room. And it's like one of those things to where when you're in a hospital, and I'm supposed to be doing assessments to making sure that you are remaining stable, getting better, and all of a sudden I don't want to spend any time with you. You think about that, and the doctors are the same way. Like, they go in and we do our job, but at some point, if all you want to talk about is the real negative stuff that's going on in the world, and you don't want to have a conversation about it, you just want to prove that you're right. No one wants to be around you.
I think that's like a fighting an infection and taking half of the antibiotic. I think that's the point that we're at in society now, where, like, everybody's on social media and they've surrounded themselves by, this group of like-minded people that only, regurgitate those very subjective views on the world, and it just amplifies itself within those positive feedback loops, and then when they exit that positive feedback loop and hit the rest of the world, that's when conflict happens. That's when, reputations are developed or ruined. And really, like, to go back to the conflict thing, because conflict is necessary, but it is not fruitful if you aren't actually working towards a resolution during that conflict. A conflict in day-to-day interactions doesn't necessarily have to have a definitive winner. Both sides can be winners if we can actually listen and come to an agreement. I'm just so sick of this all or nothing type mentality that we have nowadays, man. Like, and granted, sometimes you can't compromise. I get that. But Jesus, bro, everything's not 0 to 100. Like, everything's not binary. Listen, man, you might be surprised sometimes. Put yourself in somebody else's shoes. Like, can you? Do you really understand what it's like to be in that other person's shoes? And if you can't, then maybe work on that first. Define the problem. Oh, man. Such a good chapter. And such a heavy chapter. Like, it's really one of those ones where I couldn't tell you the rest of the titles of each rule or chapter, whatever you want to refer to them as, but I just feel like it's going to get heavier and heavier as we finish this book out. Like, what I mean by that is, like, more and more people are going to come to mind in which, like, I think, God, I just need this person to read this chapter about 10 times, or even worse, holy crap, I need to read this chapter like 10 times because this person is...
I think that's one of the things too. I was sitting in church one time, and I don't know why this randomly came to me, but one of those things to where it's like, and the preacher kind of mentioned it, and then this has nothing to do with like Christianity or anything. It just has to do with like how you think. And I'm not saying anything wrong about you. It just kind of come to me because it is important to like be like, man, I wish this person kind of understood this, but at the same time, it's more valuable to make sure that we understand it, right? And I think we all understand that, but it come to my mind, and I wanted to point that out. I want to go back to 246 because we kept trying to go back to the Carl Rogers and listening. So this is 246 up at the top. He suggested that his readers conduct a short experiment when they next found themselves in a dispute. Stop the discussion for a moment and institute this rule. Each person can speak up for himself only after he has first restated the ideas and feelings of the previous speaker accurately and to that speaker's satisfaction. Just to make sure that you completely understand, who you're talking to, their point, because he gets into this as well that they might not even understand it. He kind of talks about it with his psychotherapy discussions and like how he chose to communicate with his patients, and sometimes when people say things, that's the first time that thought has been in the form of sound, right? In the form of words coming out of their mouth, and they might not completely understand it themselves. So, and that, that's working through a problem. Albeit the person's personal problem, be it, any of the other problems that's plaguing our society at the moment. But, you're going to go through the same steps to kind of fix that. And he kind of goes through several primary advantages to this process of summary. First advantage is that I genuinely come to understand what the person is saying. Another person's problems, it may seem simple to you, but they're coming to you for help, or you want to help them, right? And it goes back to that, I don't know why this simple thing kind of keeps popping into my head, but me and Dad go around this circle anytime that we're working on anything, and it's what size nut is that, so I can get you the right wrench. And I'm like, I'm pretty sure that it's a 1/2 inch, and I'm not the best. I'm not good at all, and I'm like, I'm pretty sure that's a 1/2 inch, and Dad goes, no, it's a 7/16. So he hands me the 7/16, and I try it, and that's not it. Hey, give me a 1/2 inch. Well, well, here's a 9/16. Try it. It's too big to be a 9/16 because like the 7/16 like almost went on. It just didn't quite. And so, but I tried the 9/16 and it's too big, Dad. It's a half inch. All right, well here's a half inch. Yeah, yeah, yeah. And it's one of those things. He's not listening to me, but at the same time, I do also understand him because like none of our tools are in order. They're just all thrown in bags. So it's just like trying to find whatever. Um, yeah, I do the same thing because I don't like putting tools up. I have a old DeWalt bag, and I just whenever I get done working on whatever I'm doing, I just throw everything that I used in there because I know I'm gonna have to come back to that project at some point because something else is gonna break or I didn't set it up right. Yeah, I do the same thing. Um, the second, I'm gonna get back to the Rogerian thing because there's only three other parts to it, but I just really like that, like how to. The second advantage to the active summary is that it aids to the person in consolidation and utility of memory. Um, he kind of goes through this, and he talks about memory a couple of times, and yeah, he does. He talks about it here, but I wasn't. But anyway, so when you like, what's the point of memory, right? Um, and I'm just gonna kind of like try to briefly go over it without cutting corners. Whenever you're discussing a memory, like what are the key points? Because like me and my cousins sit around and we talk about the good old days when we were growing up, and they just are what they are. But each and every one of us have a different recollection of it. Um, a really good one that I can think of is if you and I'm gonna go back to the Bible for this. Um, yeah, Peterson goes over this too earlier, but when you go back and you're reading the different disciples chapters, um, and I'm gonna get them confused, but the story about the kid with the fish and the loaves of bread, um, there's I think there's three different stories of that, but only one disciple specifically mentions the kid with the fish and the loaves of bread, right? Um, so like, what is the point of memory? Because he gets into it, and whenever you might not even have been there, you might just be discussing with this person, letting them sort through their own memory, but it's the point of memory isn't to like dwell on it and those feelings and everything, but this is what happened. This is why. This is what I have to do to avoid such things from now on. That's a successful memory. That's the purpose of memory. You remember the past not so that it is accurately recorded, to say it again, but so that you are prepared for the future. Right?
You don't have memories to relive the past. You have those memories to prepare you for the future. And so, listen, I get it. You've had these things in your life that have been traumatic, and maybe you don't even like the word traumatic, but whatever it is, you dwell on it a lot. You think about it a lot. You talk about it a lot. You use it as an excuse for poor behavior. That's not the purpose of that memory. That's not why it's in your head. The reason why it's in your head is to learn from that experience. How traumatic, how terrible it may have been doesn't matter. You've been given this tool in your socket bag that you've thrown everything into, in which, like, you can make yourself a better person, you know, and that's why we're here. That's what we're striving towards, and so next time you think about that thing, try to reshape it, you know, the internal dialogue, if you will, like, oh my God, that was so terrible. I just, like, I can't do this thing now because that happened, and that's not it. It's like, oh wow, that terrible thing happened. Well, how did it happen? Okay. And so did I do anything that made me implicit in that situation?
Right. It's that simple. Um, uh, just real simply, the one of the first parts that he talks about in this chapter is, and I don't want to go into great detail, but he talks about this woman who was a patient of his, and she comes and she says, I think I had this like tragedy happen to me, and I don't want to say what it is, just because the algorithm will probably throw us into the dumpster. Yeah. So, but anyway, I've had this tragedy happen to me. I think, and I think, right? And this is someone who clearly has no idea who she is, what she's supposed to be, but she's an adult, right? And then the next words that comes out of her mouth is 5 times, right? So that's clearly what I think is he's talking about here is that's the point of memory, you know. If you think something bad has happened to you, your memory, the point of that is to not put yourself back in that position, right? Yeah.
The street to my neighbor's house where we play poker every Friday night. And inevitably every Friday night, I do well at the beginning of the game, but at some point I get bored and I start drinking more than I should. And then that impairs my ability to make sound decisions, compounded by the fact that I'm bored and now inebriated. And so inevitably, I end up with pocket aces and go all in when the other guy's got 4 of a kind sitting on his side. He's got 4 fucking 2s. He's got 4 2s, and all of a sudden all my money's gone again. Now, we can say that it is luck, and that's just how gambling goes, you know. And that is certainly a narrative you can run with. It is luck to an extent. Even if you count the cards, you could be wrong, I think. I think that's how that works. You know, I don't count cards. I don't know. But
I think
the point is, like, you can tell yourself that it's luck. I lose my money every week because I'm unlucky. And that is a narrative that most of the people that you will talk to about gambling will support. Yeah, it's luck. It sucks. I hate you lost that money again this week, just like you did last week, and the week before, and the week before, and the week before. And that's the point. That's the point of that story is it's a horrible subject. Losing my house because I gambled all my money away is a horrible subject. But it doesn't change the fact that I chose to go to that house. And then I chose to put in all the money I had that week. And then when I was doing well, I chose to celebrate early by having that 17th Michelob Ultra. And then I chose to go all in on pocket aces without even seeing the flop. you get the point. Tragic things can happen. And you can get so messed up every week that you might not even recall the actual events of the tragic moment. But what you can recall is all the things you did that led up to that moment. And what's most important is, again, being self-reflective, recognizing those things, and then changing the behavior, which is hard to do. Easier said than done. But by God, next week, I'm only going to have 16 Michelobs, and we'll see how...
I've been in that situation before where it was we used to do it like once a month, and we would just do like a $5 buy-in, right? $5 per for the game, just to make it interesting, right? But then 1 o'clock in the morning, and all of a sudden my buddy's looking at me and he's like, "Hey, do you want to do $20 a hand blind?" I don't remember exactly what it is, but it's poker, but it's 100% luck. It's blind, $20 a hand. You get your cards, you go face up, and they run all the cards out, and whoever wins gets everybody just throws $20 in the pot. And $120 later, and I'm like, shoot, man, I can't do this, And the memory of that is always like, yeah, don't play that. Luckily that was before I had bills, and but yeah, don't do that. And then going back to the Rogerian method that he's talking about, this is the third advantage. The third advantage to employing the Rogerian method is the difficulty it poses for the careless construction of strawman arguments. When someone opposes you, it is very tempting to oversimplify, parody, or distort his or her position. This is counterproductive game designed both to harm and dissenter? To farm the dissenter and to unjustly raise your personal status. By contrast, if you are called upon to summarize someone else's position so that the speaking person agrees with that summary, you may have to state the argument even more clearly and succinctly, than the speaker has even yet managed. This will make you much stronger. Then you will no longer have to misrepresent your opponent's position. Yeah.
About not having conversations to just win, right? Now, I've already put into practice knowing this concept previous to reading this book about the whole reciting what the other person's perspective is. I've used that tool for a while now in arguments, and I'm okay at it. I'm not an expert, but I'm okay at it. But here's the question, guys. I do that because I want to win. I do that because I want to win. So is there a way in which you can implement that? How do I change that? How do I change that? What is a better way to approach it without just the intent of being able to formulate their side of the argument so I can then deconstruct it and prove that my side is better?
Well, I'm not, because that's the thing. Because as I was thinking about this and everything, if you, and I'm gonna just bring up Dr. Peterson here. If you sit down to have a conversation with him and you want to talk to him about that, I'm just gonna say it, gender studies, because he has a lot of very strong. I don't want to call them opinions because he always has the statistics to go back behind everything. But for the most part, he knows, right?
It's perspective,
right?
It's his perspective on the issue.
And
And it should be noted, he only talks about subjects, not necessarily the issue itself. He talks about subjects related
right
to the bigger picture.
And I'm just kind of using him as you're sitting down with someone who is an expert, right? Like if I tried to sit down and I tried to talk to Otis here about solar panels and I know nothing about it whatsoever, he also goes over this in the chapter is at some point, you want to sit down and you want to find out how someone else did go about a problem, how they got around that in your life, so that you can either fix that problem in your life or you can stay away from that problem in your life. And thus, if you don't have to go through the mess that this other person did, then by all means do it. I wrote a note. So I don't like using I've said that too many times. Like the whole like winning and losing. Like I'm screw that. Like it's just a conversation. Realize that it's back to the basics. Active listening and true conversation. You have a chance to be changed yourself, right? If you are if you have a conversation with someone and it changes, and you change, is it a win or a loss? I don't want to look at it like that. I just want to see it as this is what happened, and if it makes you a better person, then yeah, sure, it would be considered a win. If it makes you a worse person, then that would be the loss, right? Same way, you talking to someone, if you, they might not necessarily change their opinion, but as long as they can see your side clearer, I see that as a positive.
You just reminded me something from this chapter that really hit home, and which is like, this won't be a direct quote, but basically what Peterson says is a genuinely good conversation is it gives you a similar feeling to hearing one of your favorite songs for the first time. What a great feeling to have, and then to touch on another point that you were just making, another question I have for the group is, are you having conversations with people in which at the end of that conversation you are changed? Your opinion has changed on something after that conversation? Because listen, if you're not, something's probably got to change, man, because none of us are right all the time. Dr. Jordan Peterson is not right every single time. And then there are some things that there are no right or wrong on. There's some gradient. And so, are you sure you're at an appropriate place in that gradient? Have you fully grasped what the concept is that you might have such a staunch opinion on? Have you really taken in the whole picture? Assume the person that you are listening to might know something that you don't, no matter what the subject is. And I mean, I want to talk religion to sexuality and everything in between, money, anything. It's important to listen to the people around you, because if you don't, you're gonna miss something that would have made you a better person in some way, shape, or fashion. Did we get through all those Rogers steps?
Yep.
Because I got one that I want to touch on a little bit, and this is a little bit of a redirection. This is something I've been thinking about, talking to the group about, and it certainly is selfish, because it's something something I've been thinking a lot about personally. And I'm going to start with a direct quote from the book, and I'm going to back into what I want to get into here. The direct quote is, "You can't fix a car with an axe, but you can cut down a tree. That's still something. You can't fix a car with an axe, but you can cut down a tree, and that's still something. What he's getting at there, I love that quote.
I do too.
Is this whole thing that we've been talking about God bless, I can't help but say it, self-improvement, right? Like, I try to dance around that word, but that's really what I'm talking about here, because on a personal level, I've got some I've got some problems that I still need to work through with certain people in my life. You know, like I've got these relationships that are very important that are also tainted because of opinions and perspectives I have about the other parties in those relationships. And so I'm thinking about going to talk with a professional to start working through those issues. Because if I don't, and we get to the end of this book, that is life, and those issues haven't been resolved, just like he talks about in this book, like reading or watching a movie where the story's all scattered, and at the end of the movie you're disappointed. You might miss the point in which you enjoyed the movie the whole time. But what I'm trying to get at is, like, if I get to the end of this book and I haven't resolved those issues with those characters, there's going to be a lot of regret there, you know. And so, to take it back to the bigger picture, you inevitably are dealing with something, right? Like, especially if you're going through this book with us, you felt the need to work on something. That's pretty clear. You recognize that, hey, this guy has laid out these rules. They based on what I'm hearing, are very useful for just kind of, you know, organizing things a little bit better, making things run a little bit smoother. You've got something going on. Now, the conversations that we have here in this group are great, and I want to keep having these conversations with you, and you know, I hope that you can be genuine, especially because we're on the interweb right now. But I'm not a professional. And Bob there commenting on your comments, not a professional either. We can work through a lot of this stuff. But I do want to just tell you that it's okay to involve a professional to work on some of these things. It makes you a bigger man to sometimes approach those situations with a professional. You know, my thing is, like, for my daughter, I don't want to have these issues lingering around on my side that could somehow manifest in her life, you know, with some issue that now she has to work through. I want to address as many of those issues as I possibly can now before it becomes an influence in their life. And so, again, one more time, it's okay. Don't be embarrassed by that. You don't have to blast it out at work or anything like that. There's people that aren't going to understand. There's going to be people that belittle you or try to trash your reputation because you're trying to improve your life. I think you can't worry about that.
I think that's one of the things too. Just to kind of, because I've some people aren't going to understand that. Like you're talking about a professional. I'm assuming you mean therapy, going to see a therapist. Some people do not understand therapy, and what it's for. But it's simply that it's just to help you. There's obviously a stigmata about that. But then at the same time, and I don't want to say like the generational differences and stuff like that, but the younger peoples are more, you know, it's kind of like a joke, like, hey, this is something I get to share in therapy this week, you know, but like that's probably not the place to talk about it at work, right? Therapy is therapy, and you leave that up to yourself. Who you're gonna share that with. If I ever went to a therapist, and by God I needed, right? Because the goal is to help you. The goal is to be a better person. And that's all it is. But I'm as a nurse, I'm not gonna talk. I probably wouldn't even talk to my coworkers about it. Definitely wouldn't say it to my patients. But as far as you yourself, and that's honestly one of the problems we have in society, is that stigmata behind therapy. But it's honestly the same as go.
Oh, sorry. I just, one of these knee-jerk thoughts. I was trying to not interrupt you, but
No, you're fine.
I have anyways with my gestures. Listen, I want to be clear about something here. Because he's talking about the stigmata, right? And there's a reason why, therapy is viewed sometimes in this negative light. There's some validity to that. I want to be clear. When I encourage you to get out on the water, what I'm really encouraging you to do is to take some time for yourself to recharge, And I choose the water because it's a quiet, peaceful place, right? It's fun. Let's not lose sight of that. It's fun to be out there, but the purpose is to be still your mind, and to be with yourself for a little while. And the reason why I bring that up is by no means am I telling you to run out and get therapy. In fact, one thing I wanted to talk about is a decent part of this chapter, a decent chunk of this chapter, which is you got to be careful with your therapist too.
Yeah.
Because your therapist can just run wild with these influential propositions. The advice that Peterson is talking about at the beginning of the chapter. If a therapist is giving you advice, you've passed the point of working through the issue. And that person has determined that you are unqualified to work through that issue. You are no longer qualified to speak on the subject or come to the resolution on your behalf. Here's the answer. You're dumb. Go do it. You want to avoid that. And what Peterson actually says in this chapter is don't run off to a therapist, especially if you don't have a good understanding of yourself. It's important first to even get to know who the hell you are. It's important first to take some time to, again, reflect and begin to even understand what these issues might be. Again, you have to define the problem before you can fix it. If you define a problem that you can articulate fully but still don't have an answer for, that's when it's time to find a professional. Peterson tells us in this chapter, you need to figure it out yourself. So take the time to be still, to focus on yourself, to focus on the things that need to be genuinely improved upon, and then start to work through it. I know it might sound like I flip-flopped around. I wanted to make that qualifying statement first, that it's okay to go get therapy, because I don't want you to be misled. We're all human. We all need help sometimes. But we're not telling you to just run off and just listen to whoever the hell tells you to do a thing.
No, and you I was getting there. I'm glad you went ahead and said it, but I was going to say, you don't have to be one of these people who, breaks their hand and then decides not to go to the hospital or to go see. Right. There's some...
I feel personally attacked, and I'm deeply offended, and I'm going to leave now.
But I mean, you get what I'm saying? Sometimes you have to have a professional in your life. And it's just like you have to be careful with what any professional says to you. I finally went for just like a routine checkup to a doctor, and I did that last year and now this year, and I did not like the way that doctor said to me. There's a couple of things, but the main thing was like, your cholesterol's out of whack. We're gonna give you a pill, and I was like, hey, go away. And that's exactly what I said. I said I will never come back here again. You have an issue, and you immediately went to a pill. Pills do not solve problems. That should not
point.
be your first thing.
That's the last resort.
And I don't want to say it's the last resort either. I mean, there's certain things, depression, stuff like that. If you feel like you're going to kill yourself, go get help. Any kind of help, you know.
Yeah.
And this is me coming as a nurse. Like that's where my mind goes. But I went to this doctor, and this doctor I've known because she worked in the hospital, and then she went to private or family medicine, and so that's why I went to this particular doctor, and she was like, do you know of anything kind of wrong? And I was like, I was told this and I was told this. And she was like, okay, well, this is just a normal checkup. You don't, you're a little big, Zach, lose some weight. And then she called me back a week later with my blood work and was like, your cholesterol's a little bit out of whack. And she told me the levels. The other doctor didn't even want to tell me the levels. She just was saying what they were, and she was just like, just try to eat healthier and exercise. And I was like, boom, that's what I want to hear. Because that's appropriate for your cholesterol levels not being exactly right. The first thing you do is you do lifestyle changes first. I feel like it goes back to disciplining your child. It's the same way as helping yourself. If appropriate, right? You have to do what's appropriate.
Yep. We've encouraged people to go to the doctors in previous episodes of this series. And in fact, I made you all the promise that I would go to the doctor, and I did. And since then, there was this thing that came up that I brought up. Screw it, I'm going to tell you. So I brought up this thing. They were like, well, some people get infections. It could be MRSA. I'm going to give you an antibiotic. And then I go to the pharmacy. Hi, I'd like one antibiotic, please. We don't have a prescription for one antibiotic. What TF do you mean? So I called the doctor back, and they're like, we don't have any record of that infection. We don't have any notes on that at all. I don't know what you're talking about. Mind you, showed this person the issue, and then in the following conversations, sent photos of said issue again, and they still wanted me to come back in. Now, here's the problem with the MRSA part. I should have been tested immediately. I don't think that's what it is, I should say. That's why I'm like, that's why I don't have a resolution yet. I don't think that's what it is. But if that was what it was, I should have never left that practice without being tested. It's a very serious thing. And so the point that I'm really trying to make, again, being long-winded here, is that you need to be careful with your professionals. Because to me, that's a pretty clear revenue-generating scheme. We just need you to come back in so we can run your insurance again, and then we'll prescribe you the medication. Because again, as a doctor, why would you say, I think you have MRSA, and then let me leave without doing anything about it? So I will not be going back to that doctor. But that's not to say I'm not going to stop. I'm not going to go to the doctor again. I'm going to find a different doctor to try to get to the end of this issue. And if it requires multiple visits, that's okay. The point is, don't let me walk out of your office without trying to further define whether or not the thing's going to kill me.
Right. I think it also, you can kind of relate it to, because I want to kind of get off of like healthcare and relate it to something else,
Sure.
just so people kind of get the understanding of what we're coming at.
Okay.
Your vehicle. You know, the maintenance lights come on. You either go get an oil change or you do not. It's kind of the same thing with you going, you know, and taking care of yourself.
Yep.
My truck right now, the maintenance light is not on, but the check engine light's been coming on and off and on and off and on and off, and it's been off now for about a month. But it's just.
What does that sound like? What does that sound like? Tell us what that sounds like. I know you know, because I know.
Just say it, because I have no idea.
Is your O2
Yeah,
sensor?
it's my O2 sensor. Basically, they're saying that the O2 sensor for my catalytic converter, saying that my catalytic converters are filled up. But I mean, it's cut back off now. But there are other more serious problems going on with my truck that I just need to sit down and fix. And it's like a tail light, one of my reverse lights don't work, one of my brakes lights is out, one of my headlights is out, and it's just the bulb's burnt out, and I just haven't sat down and pulled them and went to O'Reilly and bought a new one and put it back in. Like, I just haven't done it yet.
So now he's going to have a $200 ticket for a $5 bulb you could replace.
I got pulled over.
No, you didn't.
But not for the headlight. I was driving the car. I was driving to work, and I got pulled over for 70 and a 55, and got a warning. So I'm slowing down now. It's been.
I do 9 over. Please, police officers, don't start telling me. I do 9 over everywhere I go. I've never been pulled over doing 9 over.
I was running much faster and was slowing down to go around the curve, and he was coming around the curve. So when I saw him, I glanced down, and I was at 75. So don't drive fast. Just wake up in time to get to work on time.
Don't drive fast. Please listen. Like, I've got this friend of mine that is driving me crazy. He's got 3 kids. He's very knowledgeable in his profession. He's got enough experience, and he's getting paid about half of what he's worth. And so that's a separate issue. What I'm getting at is he's on a very limited income. Got a big family to take care of. Very limited income, and this dude drives his Ford like a bat out of hell everywhere he goes. So listen, guys, it's about making good choices. If you've only got $100 to spare every month, don't rag your frickin' car out like you're some kind of drifter. If you maintain that car and drive it like you got some common sense, you're going to spend less money on the maintenance. Make good choices.
And what we're getting at is that's for everything in life, right?
Yep.
The thing that you carry, that every person in this world carries with them every day, your cell phone. Those things are stupid expensive.
Yes, they are.
I have a Google Pixel, and I've been looking to upgrade, and I'm like, you know what? I don't want this at this point in time in my life, and I have no reason to. My screen's not cracked. I bought the cheapest protector that I could case, and it has worked perfectly. I've been very, very lucky with this phone. But yeah, just the little things to make your life easier, you know.
Right. That's it. It's again, it's a snowball effect. And listen, like the car thing, the next time your car breaks down, I hope you're self-reflecting. You know, are there things I could have done differently that could have at least gave me a little bit longer before this piece of equipment would have failed? Like my truck, like I've got a F-350 and it's 100% legal. I haven't done anything to it. Let's say hypothetically if I would have done things to it, that would have had a race mode somewhere on it and then would have left said vehicle in race mode all the time. I can't be angry at anybody but myself when my transmission starts to slip going up a mountain that I need to get up to go to work. The point being, seriously guys, the point being, like, when something's going sideways, get through it. When you get through it, please give it some thought. You know, what were the things that you could have done differently that would have had a more positive outcome? We're all learning. You know, that's the thing, man. Like at work, when you look at that CEO, when you look at that VP, that director, you know, that senior manager, that foreman, they're freaking winging it, bro. Like to an extent. What my point being is, like, they're figuring it out as they go along, just like we are. We're all on this journey, and so it's all about, you know, the snowball effect, doing a little bit better on all these different things each day. And, you know, today we're talking about, like, listening. And so you're not right all the time. The other person that you're listening to does know something that you don't know, inevitably. And if you want to be that better person that we're trying to build here, part of becoming that better person is assuming that person knows something that you don't, listening and retaining, you know, that thing that you were so fortunate to hear. That's a, he says one somewhere in this book. If you're reading this book, you're privileged. Full stop. You might have a shit life, subjectively, and arguably objectively. But you're still reading this book, man. You can read. You know how crazy that is? That I can look at these lines on this screen here, or this piece of paper here. These lines make sounds happen in my brain. I hear sounds when I look at these scribbles. These little freaking lines on this tree that I'm holding in my hand. How crazy is that? Bro, how fortunate am I to be afforded the opportunity to do that? And so recognize that. Have some gratitude for where you are. You're watching YouTube or listening to a podcast right now. Like, be humble and recognize that there's something that you can learn from everybody around you. That's all I got. I'm out. Mic drop. Peace. I'm kidding.
I mean, that the one thing that we haven't really covered is, like, the actual conversations you should be having with people, right? And
Yeah, let's hear it.
I don't know. I kind of don't want to go over it. I kind of want, if you're following along, because we've talked about all the negative stuff and everything, but it's I'm not even gonna look at the book. I'm just gonna be honest with you. It's simple. It's the true conversation is when you want the truth and the other person wants the truth, right? I mean, it's as simple as that. I'm just gonna leave it at that. It's not. I mean, that I can't really phrase it any more clearly. I'm sure Peterson could, but I'm not gonna get back into it because we're kind of deep into
that's a good way to do it. Let's continue this conversation. How about that? You know, what are the conversations that we should be having? You know, how does that look in your life? I'll tell you, reading this chapter, a lot of what I thought about was my relationship with my wife and how I can improve being a better partner by listening better.
Yeah, I'll agree with that.
and conversely, she should listen to me.
I was about to say that, but I also said that we need to focus on ourselves first.
That's right.
But
That's right.
But it does. It takes two parties, right? And
Yeah. So that's it. Let us know the conversations that we should be having. What does that look like in your life? How did it go? We want to know. We want to know. Can you tell us what next week's going to be? What is next week's rule?
Next week's rule is Rule 10. Be precise in your speech.
That one's going to hurt.
I don't want to do it.
Oh my God. I ramble so much. You know, like, I recognize that in some of the meetings at work in which I'm trying to convey this complex problem to people that aren't technical people, you know. So I have a feeling I'm going to have a few gut punches in this next chapter on things that I can be working on. It's going to be a good one. It's got to be a good one.
I'm so excited.
All right. Yeah. Listen, we appreciate you being here. We appreciate you taking the time to, you know, learn with us, grow with us, and we're happy to be on this journey with you. So we hope to see you again next week. Thank you. All right, now y'all come back. You hear?
Oh my Lord. That's it, right? We're ending it with that? Yeah.
That's
it.